I'm Alex Nisnak, quarterback of the undefeated Ithaca Yellow Jackets, and as good as it feels, we're still playing playoff football here in Michigan.
My name's Gridiron from Falkland, running back. We're not done playing football yet.
All right, thanks, guys. It may be almost deer season in other counties in Michigan, but here in Gratiot County, it's still football season. We have two great matchups from Gratiot County teams in the playoffs to get to. Hi, I'm Dave Boucher, staff writer with the Gratiot County Herald. Here on my right, fellow staff writer Curtis Wildfong, and on my left, publisher Tom McDonald. Let's get right into it. We have two teams not from Gratiot County. Going to touch on them really quick, then we're going to get into the Ithaca and Fulton matchups. First, we have Mount Pleasant, Sacred Heart, 10-1, playing Mayo Thunderbolts, 7-4.
This game's not even going to be close. Irish are going to run away with it. Frankly, I'm sorry, Mayo, but I don't know how they're still in it at this point.
I agree. It's not going to be a contest. Sacred Heart runs away with this one.
Game's over before it started. Sacred Heart has outscored its opponents in the postseason 78-0. Game over. Next game, Mount Pleasant, 11-0, hosting Cadillac, who's 8-3.
I don't think this is going to be too close either. Too much Alex Orton for the Oilers. I think they win.
Mount Pleasant, I don't see anybody stopping them, till the finals. Mount Pleasant, easy win.
Yeah, Mount Pleasant has played 5 teams that were playoff caliber throughout the season. Beat them all. Cadillac really hasn't played anybody. Probably not going to be close again. So.
Yep, and then let's get to the meaningful games here for Gratiot County sports. We have Ithaca playing host to Montrose. Montrose beat Beecher last week. 26-8 was the final, a team that they lost to in the regular season. Ithaca coming off a close win against St. Charles. They trailed for the first time this season, but senior Luke Capon, he thinks that's a good thing.
It's actually really good for us, and I'm glad it happened because we hadn't been down the whole season and we needed to face that adversity sometime, and it's good that we faced it early in the playoffs and not later when we could have possibly beat by a better ball club.
Let's get into what we think, guys. Offensive key. What's your offensive keys?
For me, the biggest offensive key for the Yellow Jackets is rhythm. It's something that's sort of been up in the air all season, actually. It hasn't really stopped them against maybe some lesser opponents early on in the season, but especially the last 3 weeks, they haven't really been firing on all cylinders. That's something they really need to change if they want to beat a talented Montrose team.
Ithaca's got to limit the turnovers on offense, limit the penalties. They got to take care of the ball. You got a core group of kids there that have been there before. Okay, they know what it's like. I agree, the rhythm has got to be there. Limit the turnovers. That's the offensive factor in this game.
Yeah, for me, the offensive key is their star, Alex Nisnak. He has to play better for the Jackets to keep winning. He had a big fumble inside the 10-yard line, I think he might even have been inside the 5-yard line last week on the way to the end zone, one that St. Charles recovered. He's had a couple picks here late in the season that were pretty big. He's got to play better. He's got to hold on to the ball. He's got to be the leader on the field. He's got to be the leader off the field. He's got to take charge. And then defensively, what do you guys think?
For me on defense, it's going to be all about stopping Montrose's quarterback, Nick Huckabee. This guy is a beast. He's rushed for 992 yards this season, 20 touchdowns, and then through the air, 934 yards and 11 TDs. He's been starting since midway through his freshman season, and he holds the school's squatting record. This kid's insane. He's going to be a very, very solid, tough back for Ithaca's defense to take on. It's going to be a huge challenge for these guys.
I've heard it all. I've heard their line is they're big, they're tough. We might not have the biggest line, but we're quick. Ithaca is quick, and I'll take quickness over size any day. I've seen it time and time again. I think our D line is quicker than their line. I've heard that they pass the ball well, but against Beecher they didn't pass it at all. So we're going to stop them in the box, and I think when they get to the air, they can't keep up with our guys. They aren't as fast as our guys. So I think the defense factor is our quickness on our line.
I agree. The defensive key for me is that defensive line. Like you said, I talked to Coach earlier in the week. Their line outsizes Ithaca's defensive line by quite a bit, 50, 60, probably even more than that pounds average across the line there. Ithaca got pushed around a little bit against St. Charles. They were blowing off the ball quite a bit. They can't do that against Montrose. Their backs are too good. They're too big. They're not going to be able to do that against Montrose. I think they gotta do a little bit better up front for Ithaca to win. And then again, like last week, guys, the X Factor. Who's your X Factor?
The X Factor for me in this game is actually the stadium. You know, they're going up to play in Kelly Shore Stadium at CMU. I know the guys love playing in that stadium, and actually, Jake Acker was extremely excited about their chances there.
As a high school kid, you don't get to see that as much as you like to, and you look in the stadium and you hear everyone screaming, and it's like, oh my Lord, it's a dream come true.
It's a quick spot. That turf's a little bit different. It's going to speed up both sides, but I think that's something that could really help out the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, my X Factor this week, though, is effort. If you watch the last 2 games, I don't want to say the effort hasn't been there, but it's been a little bit lacking. A lot of people in the area, I don't know if maybe some of the players, but a lot of people are just chalking Ithaca up on a trip to Ford Field. I wouldn't be surprised if people have their hotel reservations made. They can't forget they've got some games to play before they get there, and they're against teams that would love for nothing more than to beat the #1 ranked Ithaca Yellow Jackets. They got to bring it every game, every play, every down, all the time. They got to bring it. They can't get complacent, and I feel like they're starting to just a little bit.
The X Factor is Alex Niznak. He's got to make sure he's a Yellow Jacket for the next 3 weeks. He can't check out of the game and think he's a Central. He's got to bring it like he played last year. He's a tough kid. He is an excellent quarterback. He's got to bring it. He's got to make sure he said, like you said, he's the leader of this team. He's the quarterback. He's as big as Montrose's quarterback. If he brings it this week and next week and the 3rd week, I think Ithaca has the first state championship.
With all that, you think Ithaca moves on? Who wins?
This is definitely going to be the closest game that Ithaca has had all season long. Last week, obviously a close game. Montrose is a much better football club than St. Charles. There's no way around it. They're scoring 28 points a game overall, 32 points a game in the playoffs. That's more than Ithaca. That's a scary prospect for the Yellow Jackets. All that being said, I think the Jackets do end up coming out on top. I think Alex turns his play around. I think the defense comes up, steps up big. Might not be able to totally eliminate those runs, but controls it a little bit better than they have before. I have the final score going down 31-28, with the defense coming up with either a big stop or a turnover to really change the game.
Yeah, I have a close game as well. I think it's not only going to be the closest game score-wise, but it's going to be closest from beginning to end. I mean, St. Charles was close last week, but towards the end it kind of wasn't. You kind of knew what was going to happen. I think it's going to go down to the last couple seconds here. I think it's going to be a close game. I have Ithaca by a touchdown, 35-28. I think Montrose will have the lead at halftime, but I think Hesbrook seems to get that halftime speech in there, and they seem to get it in the second half. So I think I see that happening again.
We talked about Alex. Last week, he had another terrible first half. But I don't know what was said, what Coach Hesbrook did, what he said, but he came out and he brought it. That second half he played like the old Alex Niznak. And with that, I think Ithaca goes on 35-14. I don't know where we're going. If we're going to the UP or if we're going back to Mount Pleasant, but Ithaca goes on.
All right, now we are moving on to the final Gratiot County game to take a look at this week. The Fulton Pirates, 7-4, are traveling to Deckerville, who is 9-2. Deckerville is coming off a 36-8 whooping of Bay City All Saints last week, while the Pirates are coming off just a spectacular win at New Lothrop, 34-27 last week. Here's what Coach had to say after that big victory.
Our kids know what's expected of them. They know what tradition there is, and they know what they have to do year in and year out. And like I said, I guess right now, like I said, they're not fearful of anybody. And when you believe in yourself and you believe in your teammates, that's a dangerous combination.
All right, now we're going to move back into the factors of the game. Let's start off with offense.
Offense, I'm going to say that creativity with their play calling here in the playoffs, trick plays, reverses, halfback passes, whatever it takes, all or nothing on offense. They've kind of been doing it a little bit in the playoffs so far with some play action. They've really been integrating that into their offense, and more so far in the playoffs. I mean, Barton last week had 3 catches for 3 touchdowns on all 3 catches, so I don't know how many games that Barton has had 3 touchdown receptions, but he did last week, so I think that's going to be a key.
I agree. Zach Becker and Jared Barton are just phenomenal. I mean, I don't know what happened the first part of the season, but they really connected, the last half. And if those guys can keep that 1-2 punch together, I think, that's all they're going to need.
That, like you said, that 1-2 connection of Baker and Barton is huge for the Pirates, but I think it starts up front with the Hosses. With those big O linemen. If they're not doing their job, then Baker and Barton can't be successful. So I went to practice this week, talked with center Dakota Price. Here's what he said, went through his mind before he snaps the ball.
I got to kill the guy in front of me. That's about it. Just get that ball to Zach, and then just hit that guy hard as you can.
And that's exactly what you want to hear someone on your O-line say. That's excellent. And that's something that I think the Pirates are really going to come together. That embodies the spirit of everybody on that line, and that's going to be a key factor for them this week. So moving on into the defense, how do you think the Pirates face up here?
I think defensive key is going to be their linebackers. The offense that Deckerville runs is it's pretty run heavy. It's a veer. There's a couple different options they can go with. I think the linebackers, they got to make the right read. They've got to be in the right hole at the right time, and they've got to attack those holes. And they've got to fly to that point of attack and meet the backs, and then make the tackle. So I think that's the key is the linebackers. Can they make those reads, fill in the right holes, and hold Deckerville's backs to minimal yards?
Mm-hmm. I'll go with I did last week. It's their defense at the tackling. If they can continue to attack like they've been doing, getting the reads right. I really don't think they're going to have much problems with Deckerville.
Mm-hmm. For me, it comes down to getting off the field. We talked about it again last week. They did do a great job against New Lothrop. They still didn't force the Hornets to punt until about the 5-minute mark in the third quarter. You got to play a little bit more solid than that to be able to continue to be successful in the playoffs. And this Deckerville attack isn't something to look over. Last week against Bay City, rushed for 444 yards on 69 plays. That's a pretty impressive offense. I know Bay City may not be the best team in the state, but that's still impressive at any level. So they really need to focus on making those stops and getting off the field when they can. So now let's take a look at the X factor.
The X factor, Tommy talks about a little bit, tackling. They need to tackle. Bigger backs from Deckerville, good backs. When they get a shot at them, they got to take them down. They can't give up too many yards after the first hit.
Coach Winkler's no statement. They got to believe in themselves, and the team believes in themselves, and it all comes together. And like I said last week, it's Fulton. They know what it takes, and for some reason they're starting to click. And I wouldn't put anything past this team. Deckerville plays in a weak league. They're still in the regionals. I think the X factor is they got to believe in themselves and believe as a team.
Definitely. For me, the X factor, execution. It's something that they've really, really picked up on from the beginning of the season. Beginning of the season, frankly, it was awful. But I talked to Coach this week. He says they have over 100 plays on that offense that they can run, but people keep telling them, it looks like you only run 10 plays. That's exactly what he wants to hear, That means they're doing those subtle formation changes or bringing somebody in motion, and that can make all the difference in a big playoff game like this. So they have to maintain that level of execution in order to come out with a big win. So, all right, let's move on to the predictions now. Curtis, what do you got?
Fulton's constantly getting better. Like you said, they struggled at the beginning of the season. It seems every week they're playing a lot better, and I don't think it's going to stop this week. I think they're going to win 21-16 over Deckerville. I think when teams look at Fulton and they see that 4 losses in their record, I think they're maybe overlooking them a little bit, and you can't overlook this Fulton team. They're too hot.
I agree. I think Fulton 28-14 might be a little bit closer, but you can't overlook them. They are the team to go with.
Yeah.
And so, my prediction is going to be the Fulton Pirates, along with Sacred Heart, Mount Pleasant High, and Ithaca, we have a Central Michigan going to the semifinals.
That's true. So, again, I got to agree with you guys. Deckerville has played one team in the regular season that made it onto the playoffs. Ubley, they lost 40-0. Fulton beat the #1 ranked team in the state, week 1 of the playoffs in Fowler. Beat the #4 ranked team in the state, New Lothrop, last week. They're on a roll. It's going to be really, really tough for Deckerville to stop them. I can't pick against Fulton again. Picked against them last week. Not going to make that mistake again. I have the Pirates taking it 30-21. All right, well, there you have it. The gurus have spoken. I'm Dave Boucher, staff writer. This is Tom McDonald, publisher, and fellow staff writer, Curtis Wildfong. We thank you for joining us. Make sure you pick up a copy of next week's Gratiot County Herald to see how we did and for all the latest highlights, news, and analysis.